Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Zabinski.
I'm Todd Crawford.
We are Too Cool for the Comic Shop. And in accordance with this show, we won't be talking about comics or shops. We're actually going to be continuing with our series discussing Christopher Nolan films. We've actually discussed 6 of his 10 feature movies on the show already. And now we'll be talking about Tenet, the most recent release from this acclaimed director. The movie came out in some theaters at the beginning of September. I saw the movie 2 weeks ago now. And Todd, you just saw it last night. Am I right?
That's right. Real quick, I gotta interrupt to say, is Tenet the 10th Christopher Nolan movie?
Yes, it is, boy.
Oh,
Yes, it is.
it's like a
Okay, so
Hateful Eight
let's
kind
talk
of
about the
thing.
genius of the title for a good 2 hours before we get into the movie, right?
I was thinking about the whole movie actually, because oh, it's called Tenet because it's the same in forwards or backwards. It's a palindrome. That's why they chose
Yes,
that. I didn't also know
exactly.
that if you look at it from the front or the back, it says 10.
Yes, dude. Yes. So, okay, here's the beautiful thing about that. And I hate to dunk on Tarantino again because I did it, I think, last podcast as well. Actually, I don't hate to dunk on Tarantino. It's what I live for.
Didn't you say,
So
yeah, didn't you say in the last episode that he's I quote, a fucking idiot and you wouldn't piss on him if he was a toilet?
I don't know. You'll have to put the timestamp in the description. Just double check. I mean, we were talking about directors and like style and like you said that Tarantino loved Dunkirk and then we got on a tangent, but now the tangent is coming full circle, right? Because Tarantino named his eighth movie, which I guess it was like a ninth movie, so that was incorrect. But he named his eighth movie The Hateful Eight, and that doesn't lack. I mean, that lacks subtlety, right? I mean, the word eight is in the movie title.
Yeah.
There's 8 characters. The Hateful Eight. Ha ha ha. Get it? It's meta, dude.
Is that the whole
But
tangent? Oh, okay.
no. I just wanted that to soak in for a little bit, and then Christopher Nolan has a little bit of subtlety, so he puts the word 10 in his title. But it's just one of those perfect titles where it's like, it's got the meaning of the word tenant. It's got the palindrome to get the whole time, symmetry across. And then it's also his 10th movie, but it's not like the movie's called 10. I don't know. I love it. Just stuff like that itches my brain. So I'm obviously a Nolan chill.
Could
So,
you imagine if it was called like the Timely 10 or some shit?
ew, that's what Tarantino would have called it. Oh, God.
10 in time.
Timely 10. That's the worst thing I've ever heard.
That's really
So,
funny. Just the
that
fact that it's his 10th movie, because I didn't know that. I was thinking about that all day yesterday watching it.
I'm glad it makes you happy because yeah, it has some subtlety. You didn't realize it until like a day later, for like until you asked me for sure. So, I love it.
Yeah. So this movie, I feel like this movie is his closest. Like, if you're looking for which movie of his he's made in the past, this is the closest to Inception, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like this movie has DNA from 2 of his movies in particular, Inception being one of them, and Memento being the other, which was his first feature. He did have a black and white like short film called Following, but that's not really counted when people count his movies. And I'm not sure if you've seen Memento, but Memento is
Yeah.
basically told backwards and forwards at the same time. In this movie, obviously, we're getting into spoilers for this podcast. Does that as well, just not simultaneously.
Yeah, and I have seen Memento, and I forgot about it because I know that's the whole like gimmick of the movie is that it's told out of sequence. But this movie, like, because it's oddly enough time is a plot device and not just a narrative device.
Right.
I wasn't really thinking about it like that, but you're right. And it just for the
Yeah, I
listeners,
mean
like,
it's
well,
definitely different. Like time is used differently. Like there's no algorithm time travel bullshit in Memento. It's just told out of sequence.
oh, there's not.
Well, I mean, I might need to watch it again just to
Maybe I
make sure. Maybe
misunderstood
I
that
missed the
one.
meaning. Damn it. Uh, I didn't get the full understanding of Memento. 20 years ago. Come on.
But real quick here, I'm just gonna say that we'll announce when there's gonna be serious spoilers. I would say maybe we'll talk about like the first half of the movie, minor
Sure.
setting stuff up, and then we'll, because this is such a recent film, it would be unfair just to, for the filmmakers and the audience to
Yes.
just drop spoilers in there, and we won't be doing that.
Absolutely, I
We'll
agree.
give a
So
warning.
we can talk about, the vanilla stuff, the stuff that was already revealed in trailers, and just general things like what we thought about the characters and the plot without going deep into it. Um,
Yeah. So how
I
did
think
you
it's yeah.
feel about the main character getting his head cut off at the end?
I mean, that was pretty dope. I feel like what is that? Does that consider like a lynching since this is Nolan's first like black lead? Because Nolan has a tendency, one of his flaws as a director, I will admit, is I think every main character before John David Washington's protagonist is a white man with slick back hair. Am I wrong?
I
I think
mean,
I'm right.
I wouldn't say it's like a flaw as a director, but it's definitely something that he does. I mean,
It's yeah, I mean it's I would say it's kind of
that's actually what I liked about his
he's known for his
movies.
innovation and like you could probably put like Matthew McConaughey and Leo and Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman and Al Pacino. You like put them all in a blender, and then they would like make ideal Hollywood white male that could be in every movie that's ever been made. You
Robert
know?
Pattinson in this movie is like the typical Christopher Nolan character. They even kind of all look like Christopher Nolan. That's how he acts or how he dresses.
Yes, yeah, that's the whole theory too. Is like Christopher Nolan just like makes himself the main character, which is grossly like over exaggerating it because I don't think he thinks he's Batman, to my knowledge at least.
Well,
But
it's a
yeah,
weird thing because I was thinking about that some of watching the movie because I was really hoping there wasn't any race shit in it because it's like how am I gonna have to talk about that in a way that's responsible and mature? But
right. I mean, and there isn't.
no,
Sometimes I think movies are obviously there needs to be dramas where race is the subject of a film or a theme of the film. But yeah, I mean, that wouldn't belong really in this movie, and it's I think it's powerful, and we might get into it with more spoilers later. But just talking broad strokes, my brother and I are huge Nolan fans. We were talking about Tenet when we both saw it, and essentially this film kind of feels like an equal rights kind of statement from a director who usually casts like white men as his leads. It's like it's kind of like a way that like a man of color and like this woman both gain power back over their lives is really kind of like what those two main characters go through in this movie. And like I don't think that Nolan had ever really given such a strong kind of character arc for a woman before. Women in Nolan's movies are typically, other than like Murph and Interstellar, I would say, other than that, they're usually not really propelling the plot. They're kind of plot devices.
well, what about Ellen Page in Inception? Because
Oh, that's fair.
yeah, because she
That's
gets like
fair.
the most to do in that, other than Leo.
Right.
In
That's
some ways,
right.
maybe
See,
more than Leo,
sometimes I think
honestly.
about Inception and like Maul marrying Cotillard. Like she's obviously a plot device. Like
Oh
she's
yeah.
like there for like Cobb story. Yeah, maybe I just don't view Ellen Page as like since she's kind of more androgynous. Maybe my mind was like she's not a woman. But yeah, you're right. There's definitely a woman in that movie.
Well, see, that was and to go back to the Tenet stuff, the thing with diversity in film now that's kind of strange is that we think of diversity as in like black people and white people, but
Right.
the reality and the race demographics in America is like I think black people are like 15% of American population, let alone black men specifically. So like
Right.
it's not that uncommon to have what we would call white because you have like
Right.
Italian, Irish, all this whole hodgepodge that's considered white, and then the black people also have different heritages as well. And it's a weird
Yes.
thing where like in some ways I did a video on this way back before long shot was a thing about diversity on that and how like really a lot of diversity quotas in movies are almost just kind of lazy Like I always make a joke where it's
Yeah.
like that's my ideal job. I want to be a diversity quota manager, so that I'm watching a movie and I'm like, what if her husband was black? And like you did it. Promotion.
Right. No, I kind of every movie is different, and I think some movies handle it well, and some movies do not handle it well. I
And
mean,
that's what I
and
was
one
worried about in
if you're
this.
not thinking about the amount of diversity or whatever, I think the movie has accomplished diversity quota, if you want to say it. I don't know if this is like controversial to say, but like if if you're not like thinking to yourself, wow, literally every actor in this movie of like 30 characters is white. That'd be kind of weird. That would stick out to me. That would be probably a diversity problem. Unless it's like a story about World War One, or which the context in which the film is
Yeah.
telling a story makes sense, of course. I mean, it really comes down to every single different movie.
One thing that makes me laugh is I'm always so worried to talk about stuff like that. But then I look at my own books and they're like very diverse and all that. And what I
Right.
hate is it's basically lazy writing is that it hides behind a black lead or a female lead, and there's always
Hmm.
a smug air of like, well, you don't like the movie because it's got a woman. And I my
Right.
issue is that I respect women, and everyone I try to respect and see as equal. And so
Right.
when you get a movie where it's just like this like ridiculous pandering, I just see it as insulting. I see it as
Right.
treating minorities or whatever like pets. And I think it's
Yeah.
very
No,
offensive
there's
actually.
and well, and some people who are maybe in that more smug category, right? Like if you question it and like question the inclusion of such diversity, maybe it is pandering, maybe it isn't like you know in there for the right reasons. Like maybe it's there to fill a quota to make movie money on marketing or something or whatever. And so if you question that, then you're automatically like racist or something. When like you and me do seem to put a lot of diversity in our characters and our casts and our own books, because like I very much find it exciting and challenging to write from somewhat different perspectives, or to just include characters who are different because like that's fun. Like I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult, and this is kind of getting on a tangent, but um, I try not to write from different perspectives in the sense that I can't account for the black experience. I don't think
Right.
that I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to try to convey it. Same with being female in many ways. Like, and I'll write
Right.
characters, people of color or women and all that, but or LGBT characters and all that, and I like having that, but I try not to account for them. I find it holding me back creatively because I don't like writing about good people. And so, like, if I write
Yeah.
about bad white men and the issues that white men do, I'm comfortable self-criticizing. But like, let's say, like,
Right.
if I have like, many of my books deal with characters with those flaws that are typically associated with white men, to then do that and be like, this is what's wrong with black men. That would be
Right.
a very offensive and wrong for me to write personally. So I also get why some writers are afraid to approach those things. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I guess without getting too far off onto a tangent with that stuff, typically my issue is that because of bad writing, because of laziness, because of essentially the objectification of diversity itself, anytime there's diversity in a film, there's always this worry. It's like, is it going to be that thing where like the character looks into the camera with like that DreamWorks smile? It's like problem.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I haven't
Well,
seen
especially.
Captain Marvel. I haven't seen it. I like Brie Larson actually. I think she's a good
Right.
actress. I like the directors. They made one of my favorite movies, Half Nelson, with Ryan Gosling. So
Right.
I'm happy it was a success because I like the people who worked on it. But I have no interest in Marvel movies, so I didn't watch it. But
Yeah.
I get why it rubs people the wrong way.
Well, I did see Captain Marvel, and I completely hated the movie because it did feel like exactly like the look into the camera. I'm woman, deal with it. But it did stuff like that, but it sacrificed good character writing. Like the character writing of Captain Marvel is so lousy in that film. So that's
It's
a
not
great
how women
example
are.
where I actually think it's pandering to make Captain Marvel have it be so poorly executed. But then everybody has to like celebrate the movie and like say it's a good quality movie, unless and if you think the movie's bad, then like you're sexist, I guess.
As opposed to, I think it was the same year, Bo Burnham's film Eighth Grade came out, which might be the best depiction of not only youth but like young girls maybe ever put on film, honestly. And I always
Right.
cite that when people are like, "Well, you don't like you." I don't usually get this myself because I don't talk anything positive or negative about Captain Marvel because I just haven't seen. I have no interest in it. But
Right.
with those kind of things, like, "Oh, so you don't want Ghostbusters? You don't want little girls to look up to Ghostbusters?" Like, no, I don't. I don't want little boys to either. I would want little girls to look up like eighth grade or something, not not like ghost
Right.
fighting people that fly and punch through walls. I don't give a shit if they want to be that. I'd rather they just like want to be a good person and have realistic heroes. It's cool to like those movies,
Yeah.
male or female, but it's weird you can't criticize those things because there's just like weird
Yeah.
firewall around them. Even for people
It
like
is.
us that generally are open to different people. Like, I mean, I'm a total bitch when it comes to movies. I love Heathers and Clueless and Ginger Snaps. I love Men Suck, Women Rock movies. I'm a
Yeah.
nerd that
Yeah.
doesn't get enough action. I love movies where hot girls are cool and interesting.
She's the man. Is that your favorite movie, Todd?
Yeah,
Oh, Colt made me watch that
she is
earlier
the
this
man.
year. It was so bad. Um, yeah, Mean Girls is a great movie. I watched that this year.
Oh,
We
it's
were getting on
brilliant.
so many tangents. I didn't know this was going to turn into the diversity podcast, and
Yeah. Well,
now
going
we're going
back
to
to
get
Tenet,
canceled. So
Tenet doesn't have any of that, though, is the thing. Like, there's a little
yeah,
bit of, like, the black man saving the white woman from the evil white man, but it's just kind of typical Hitchcock James Bond shit. It's not.
right. Well, because and you wouldn't be making a like I understand what you're saying, but like nobody would make that conclusion if on David Washington was white. So I mean, it's just like there's never any explicit race anything. It's like a post race kind of movie. I mean, it Tenet is diverse in the sense that yeah, they just threw a good actor in the role and he happens to be black. Is
Yeah,
basically
exactly.
how because there are movies that I diverse that are very purposely diverse, whether for good or bad reasons, and then there's movies that just like hey, we wanted a good actor who was very athletic, and like they talked about that in some of the behind the scenes stuff that I saw is that um, John David Washington did most of his own stunts for the film, and they wanted that physicality that he could bring to the table. I mean, so once it comes down to casting decisions and things like that, is that role could have been raceless essentially, and whoever is best at the job gets the job, which is essentially how a lot of movies should probably work.
Yeah, it's like Night of the Living Dead, one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite performances ever. I unfortunately don't remember the actor's name, but the male lead in the film who plays Ben, he was just chosen because he was the best actor they knew. And that film specifically, people think there's a huge racial message, and I think you could say there is. But the black male lead in that movie is shot by rednecks, because they mistake him for a zombie. And
Yeah,
I think the movie was released the day after Martin Luther King was shot. So a lot of people think that it was a big statement on racism, but it would appear from the information that I have that it was just pure coincidence, just the kind of the right thing at the right time that connected
it's
with
very
people.
interesting. Yeah, and not to speak for a population that I'm not, but like also it must get exhausting for like good actors who are of a different ethnicity, for them to like just want to be an actor, but like there's always a conversation about race or diversity whenever they are in any movie. Like that must get annoying too, because like just people are acting and wanting to be in movies and are doing just as good a job. I'm sure it's probably gets old for them on the other side of the coin too.
Yeah, because I would imagine there would be like a responsibility or feeling of that with representation, where you're not just an individual human being, you're an
Right.
ambassador. That's just a
I mean,
pure
look
guess.
at Chadwick Boseman and like just the kind of air of response to him passing away. Most of the news stories after his death and like people talking about him, some of them were related to, oh, did you know Chadwick Boseman wrote the most biting racial commentary in Black Panther, and it was one of the villain's lines, and like it's kind of weird that that's also very brave and very cool, but it's almost like at the same time it's like, oh, was Chadwick Boseman's life like defined by that too? It's like it's
Y-
interesting.
Yeah, and one of the things with this movie, though, is like you said, it really could have been anybody in the role, and it
I
was
mean,
kind
he's
of
called the protagonist. He doesn't even have a name.
yeah. That's one of the things I really didn't like in the movie, but
Yeah.
but yeah, like the way it's done stuff, it's very James Bond. It's very Alfred Hitchcock, like North by Northwest, or I forget which one it was. I feel bad because it had Claude Rains in it, and there's a wine cellar who's hiding something in. He's like a spy or some shit, and the oh man, I gotta look it up. But anyhow, you got like this spy coming in, and the wife that he teams up with against the abusive husband,
Oh
and
wow.
I think it was Gregory Peck, maybe in that one. I don't know. I'll look it up later. It doesn't matter.
It's
But
quite similar.
but yeah, it's very archetypal actually in terms of a plot structure, which is smart and was what I really thought kind of helped the movie in the later acts because it's a little bit convoluted in some ways.
Oh yes. But we can talk about him being named the protagonist. I kind of agree with you. It just kind of seems like somewhat pretentious just letting him be named the protagonist. I mean, I understand the need for self-insertion and the whole hero complex, and I just maybe I would like it more if I understood what was in Nolan's head when he wanted to leave the character just named the protagonist and not give him a name. I mean, because I feel like I understand most of what they were going for in the story, but I don't think what they were going for changes at all if they just gave him a name.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that his name isn't John or whatever, but for me, like, there's a point in the movie, or I think even multiple points, where he literally says, "I'm the protagonist," and it's almost like you just see him like look into the camera and smirk, and there's like a little glimmer on his teeth. It's
Yes.
so like what you said about Tarantino and like subtlety. It's like a
Yes.
parody of Tarantino.
Yes. I completely agree with you. And like, I think there are at least two moments where he says, "Well, I'm the protagonist."
Yeah.
I think he's always talking to like the arms dealer woman
Yes.
in both of the instances. It's like towards the beginning of the movie and like at the
The
very
very
end of the
last
movie.
scene.
Yeah, and it's like, is that like a secret code word? Like, does that is that funnier to him than it is to us as the audience? Like, I don't know.
Like it's kind of a nitpick because it's such a little detail the whole movie, but it's just like every time it happens, it's just a groaner. It's just kind of cringy.
it's very dorky. I think it's just a very dorky thing to do, and I think Nolan just thinks he's cheeky, and he was like, I'm just gonna leave him name the protagonist, and it's certainly not as like flamboyant and ridiculous as a lot of the things Tarantino does, but it is similar in just how stupid for no reason it is.
Yeah, I worked on a movie in college, um, and when I was writing pages for the script, um, I just had the main character. We didn't come up with a name yet, so I just put MC for main character, just like because I was writing it
Huh.
longhand, so it was just quicker to write that way. And we just wound up keeping that as the character's name through the movie MC, and
Was that like his initials or that was his name,
that was just
MC?
his name. He was just called
Oh,
MC.
very good, very good. Well, you should have worked on Tenet with Nolan, and maybe his name would have been MC Jones.
What I was thinking was maybe he saw that movie, and
Probably right. Probably right. Well, okay, we've talked about the main character, who honestly, he's great. I think his
Yeah.
acting is solid, but he's also not a very complex character. I mean, he's just a good man doing good stuff. I mean, like, you know,
Yeah,
as
no,
far as main characters go, he's definitely one of the least complex of Nolan's protagonists.
no, I agree. Like, I think that George Washington gives a solid performance. He's likable, he's fun and charismatic.
You just said George Washington gives a solid
I
performance.
did that was on purpose. Um,
Yeah, I just wanted to double check because like in my George Washington in this movie was like in my imagination after you said that, and I think it's a very beautiful image.
you're welcome.
He
But
would fight the Russians, wouldn't
he would. But
he?
but that's the thing is like he's good in the role and like he has a lot of chemistry specifically with Robert Pattinson. The scenes where they're like buddying up, it's really enjoyable and fun. But he's just not given too
Yes.
much as a central character, and that's kind of the
Right,
point in some ways. I do get that, but I wish there was just a little more from him.
right. Well, I do agree with that. And I think they do it on purpose because the actual emotional core of the movie is the female lead.
Yeah,
And you're essentially she's a very interesting character because just watching the movie, seeing it go on, she's essentially a damsel in distress. I mean, she is essentially a Princess Peach. Um, but at the same time, they do characterize her well enough that you never feel like she's like objectified as a damsel. Like I always felt that like she was a strong, getting stronger throughout the film character. Um, but I feel like the horror of her situation and the actual abuse was actually pretty frightening. That was probably the frightening part of the movie to
yeah.
me.
There's kind of a shocking part. It's something I kind of had an issue with, but I kind of felt as the movie went on, actually wasn't that much of an issue. Particularly with the villain, where I always hate the one note villains that are just evil. I always talk about what's that one movie, Shape of Water, where the bad guy he's sexist, he's racist, he's a capitalist, he's a rapist,
Right.
he
He
shoots
doesn't want
people.
this janitor to fuck that squid, and
Yeah, he has absolutely no. He's
obviously,
not human. He's just an evil robot for no fucking reason. The whole
yeah.
goddamn
I mean, but
movie.
good moral people would let that water loving happen. Obviously,
Yeah, the movie almost had shades of that to me with Kenneth Branagh's character. But honestly, as it went on and they explained it more, I actually liked how they did it in many ways. But there's a scene where
me
he has
too.
kind of an explosive episode on a woman that is shocking because like Nolan doesn't typically have that kind of violence against women except when they get blown up.
Jesus Christ, you're
There's
not
one
wrong.
example.
You're not wrong.
But they don't show the woman's flesh get torn off or anything. So when something like
No,
that happens in this film, it's really shocking because you typically don't expect to see that kind of harm against women, especially in film. It's not like a hard R or
yeah.
anything.
Well, that
Um,
scene in particular, it's basically right in the middle of the film. I was like, it definitely got my blood boiling. I was like, all right, this villain was like fun and hokey until now, but now I'm like pissed and I like want to see this man like suffer. So it definitely did its job. I mean, it his character as a villain is actually, I honestly think, pretty good. He does start off as kind of like cheesy B tier James Bond villain, but as the movie goes on, they add enough little spice to kind of explain that he's essentially a man who is like this obsessive, compulsive control freak where I mean, he wants control of everything. He wants control over who fucks his wife. He wants control over, his resources and his men, and he wants control over all of existence. So big spoiler alert. Click
yeah.
forward or backward or something. I mean, we find out that essentially because of all the time
Well,
travel
hold up,
bullcrap.
just 1 second. Do we just
Yeah,
want to
go ahead.
because like I keep feeling like held back by not being able to discuss because so much of the movie it's one of those movies where it's always a step ahead of you, and then you're like kind of
Yeah.
following it, but you're a little bit behind, and then you're like which makes it hard to just discuss without spoilers. You say fucking just spoiler wall right now.
Yeah, I think what
Yeah.
we've been talking for like at least half hour. So yeah, let's just unlock the floodgates.
All right, you can continue.
All right, so to continue with my point, he's such an insecure control freak that he is literally willing to blip the universe out of existence through the time travel bullshit, because he is going to die. That's how much of an insecure control freak he is.
Yeah,
And,
and
and once they like spice up his like motivation like that, he is like so horribly cartoonishly evil to such the nth degree. And I think if you are going to make a one-dimensionally evil character, like just go all the way, make it like an Emperor Palpatine where he has zero redeemable qualities, and I think they did that pretty well with him.
yeah, I think he got much more interesting as it went on. Like at first, we don't know much about him. He's just kind of that typical evil rich guy shit. But then they got almost like Thomas Pynchon with it in a way, where it's like he's got the art stuff, but it's also this huge nuclear weapon thing. But then also what I
Right.
really liked, this is kind of even more Pynchon-esque, was that he's just kind of a guy that's at the right place at the right time, and he's really just kind of a useful asset that he was never really even that important. By the end of the film, you kind of find out in many ways. It's just
Right.
kind of circumstantial. And I actually really like that, whereas like the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, I don't know, how's this guy that powerful? He's just like a buffoon, and he's just like this rage machine. And then once that's kind of laid out for you, it actually kind of works as like he's doing this because he's dying. He really doesn't have the power that he's tried to convince himself that he has. So he's
Yeah.
desperate to maintain any control, like you say, he's a control freak. And then it became much more enjoyable and interesting to me. I think the whole film did it. It really was a film where, for me, it really started to click in the third act more than anything. I really thought got much better as it went on.
Yeah, I would agree with that because in talking about the roller coaster that the movie is, you really are just you have no idea what's really happening until like an hour and 50 minutes through. Like you just don't know what the fuck's happening. And it's really not until the red and blue room scene, I guess I'll call it, then you finally understand how everything truly works and how there's been multiple scenes that you've watched in the movie where unexplained shit happens and you just accepted it. Because like the movie keeps it pretty close to the chest that I guess, people can be inverted. Because it's really just for an hour and 50 minutes, just like, oh, it's like the objects can be inverted. Um, then once they invert everything, like you start to understand it, but still have way more questions at the same time going into the third act.
Yeah, and I never thought the film was like hard to follow in terms of like you have no idea what's going on, but there's just this constant feeling for quite a bit where like you just feel like you're missing some piece of information. You just feel like there's just something elusive that you're just
Yes,
not getting. And then yeah,
just
roughly
kind of an
around that
exhilarating
point
experience.
that you mentioned, it's kind of like, oh, okay. And one thing I have to praise the film for is it has a strong emotional core where you're following George Washington and Robert Pattinson and the lady, and
Yeah.
and
Go-
I thought about a horrible joke when you said she was a damsel. I was gonna
yeah,
make up a
what's that?
fantasy scenario in the film and act like it actually happened. Where I said, like, I don't know. There's one line in the film where Robert Pattinson says that she puts the damn in damsel, and I just found it kind of tasteless. But I figured I wouldn't
That
know.
line probably that I can imagine Neil saying that in the movie. Honestly, that's not even that far fetched.
Actually, yeah, I could see that. Um, but yeah,
He's
like
kind of a he's kind of a jackass. He's just constantly a smart aleck the whole movie. So I could see it.
yeah. Um, so once you get to that middle part is when it really starts to kind of get there. And then for me at the end, like I said, once it really leaned into Hitchcock territory and just James Bond territory, I actually kind of enjoyed the movie most when it was doing those archetypal cliche things. Um, I just kind of thought it was
Right.
just a good example of that kind of movie. I just thought that stuff
Well,
all worked.
and I think that's fine because, like, yeah, and, from a narrative standpoint, this isn't that innovative, like compared to like Inception or Interstellar, where like those stories were pretty unique. This is very much like a spy movie, and I think it's because the whole reverse time gimmick is so complex that you don't need to like reinvent the wheel of the story on top
Exactly.
of that. That would just be too much.
Exactly. And I think that's why I really appreciated the simplicity of the plot itself, because the mechanics
Right.
of it are, it's kind of convoluted. It's kind of like almost a parody of a Christopher Nolan thing at some points. Not like it's ever like terrible or anything, but like just the idea of
Right.
the bullets going back into the gun and everything in reverse and all that. Like it's really just like almost like Jenga or something, but you're putting more and more into it, just
Right.
waiting for the tower to collapse. And so like when you have very simple characters and a simple general emotional core to the plot, it really helped it. I think the film really benefited from that simplicity.
I agree. I agree with that very much. And yeah, I mean, I agree that Tenet is almost like very much a Nolan, like no duh kind of movie where it's like when the first big trailer came out and like the bullets went back into the gun, it's like, oh, of course Nolan would make a movie like that. Like that's kind of your reaction at this point. He's done
Yeah.
so many crazy, wild things where it's like, yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, you'll definitely expect a crazy, wild thing pretty much every time. Um, and this one was about time and not space and dreams and Batman, but or magic. He's always got this like one word, like
There's
it's
always
like
like a
they write
gimmick.
a word on a drawing board and they're like Batman, magic, dreams, and then they just like go wild. It's funny.
Yeah, I have to say this particular mechanism, we'll call it, for the film, the hook, didn't totally work for me at points. Specifically the part where he's in the airport fighting. I thought the fight was kind of goofy, to be honest. When he's like scooting across the floor and
Yeah,
all that stuff, it was a little silly, I have to admit.
I really feel I honestly that because obviously later in the movie you find out he's fighting himself.
Yeah.
So the I just want to I really need to like rewatch that fight. Like I need to like take the DVD remote and I need to like rewind and play it and watch it and rewind again. Like because reverse motion is so completely unnatural. Like our it's almost like the human eye can't comprehend it. So I'm like I'm torn between whether I think it's goofy or whether I think it's like completely genius. And it's like I don't know because like I just want to look at it more closely more than just once.
Yeah, and I mean that is the thing, like horror and comedy, there's such a thin line between the two, between like how much of
Right.
something is scary and how much of it's funny. And it's really just such a fine line, it's almost not visible. And that's kind
Yeah.
of how this was, where like it's kind of cool, but it's kind of just goofy. And one of the things that pissed
Yeah.
me off with that scene specifically was that even though, so the one him that's moving in reverse, so the version of Washington that is we follow the second time we go through the scene as an audience,
Yeah.
why does he shoot his gun at all? There's certain moves where it's like, well, why would he do that if he knows he's trying not to hurt himself or kill himself? And also,
Maybe does it accidentally go off? Like because
maybe,
they're wrestling it out of his hands. So like the one going in reverse is obviously aware, but the one going forward was never aware. So maybe he made it go off like accidentally. I don't know.
that
It's a good
could
question
be.
though.
But also,
It's
why
a
did
good
they
question though.
introduce? It's just like a throwaway line where they mention like if you touch yourself, your atoms will explode or whatever. Why did they bring that up if it wasn't ever like a point and he directly confronts himself? Like I know he has covering and stuff on, and that's fine. Like maybe they just like you're wearing that suit that way, it'll protect your molecular or whatever. But like it was kind of weird
Way
they brought that up,
I
and there was never a real threat of him disintegrating.
Right. The way I interpreted that line, and yes, the like going into the third act, like things make more sense, but there's also like giant things you just have to accept. Like, oh, universe can blip out of existence if all these bombs go off, and he kills himself, and it's like, oh, okay, that's fine, sure. And then it's like, and then Robert Pattinson is like, go back to sleep, don't think about it. And it's like, okay, okay.
It's
Um,
yeah, it's true. There's a lot of movie logic in this one.
I mean, when you're dealing with the unknown crazy bullshit, it's just like at a point like the interstellar black hole or all of Inception, like you really just got to be like, I accept this. Like it's very fun to think about how the mechanics of it all works, and for most part does it does operate within its own sense of logic most of the time. I do like the entropy thing and how they in reverse, you'll freeze to death if you're in an explosion. Like something like that is like cool, and it does take some forethought to like kind of try to make a sci-fi reason for it instead of just making shit up. I do appreciate that effort. But then there's other times where, yeah, I mean, for what you said, like I don't think it was ever meant to be like a Back to the Future Part Two, where it's like, oh, if you see yourself, you'll disintegrate. The way I kind of understood it is if too many versions of yourself go forward and backward, like literally overlap, like say a version of you, Todd, was sitting in your chair right now, but you are also sitting in your chair right now.
Yeah,
I
and
think
I guess
like the atoms would like literally just blip out, you know?
well,
I guess
and that's
I
the
don't
thing though,
know.
is that he was like actually fighting with himself. And once again, I know he had the covering and stuff, but you'd think that maybe there would have been a point where like a glove gets thrown off or something, so he has to like he can't use that hand fighting himself, or
Right.
I don't know. You think they would have implemented that in the
Yeah,
plot because they introduced it as a potential threat, and it didn't really seem to pay off.
I hear you. I hear you. I think that could have been an interesting concept. There's just a lot of concepts with the whole reverse time mechanic. I think the beauty of this movie is that, like you said, the movie itself, the story is simple to understand. I was never lost story wise. I always felt like I thought that they were. I always felt like I thought they were going for very obvious themes in the movie, themes of friendship with like um, Neil and the protagonist, and themes of gaining control over your life with our damsel there, and just very positive messages. But then the plot itself is insanely complicated. If you try to like make sense of every single element of inversion or reverse time, like I was trying to do when I watched the movie, you will make your brain explode.
No, I feel like it's definitely like me as a viewer, I can just go on movie logic most of the time. I will say this was a harder pill for me to swallow than Inception or something. Just because so much of understanding it's kind of hinged on you following that part of it or buying
Right.
into it. But I don't really give a shit about those details in movies at my age. It's fun to
Right.
think about if it's just a straight flaw or I notice it, it could bother me. But I'm more easygoing with that stuff than a lot of people, I think. But if you're someone who's like over analyzing the physics and logic in movies and stuff like that, you're probably going to have a hard time with this one, I would imagine, more so than his other movies.
Right. I usually just analyze it for fun because I think that
Yeah.
adds to the enjoyment. Because like I don't really analyze it to critique it, because at the end of the day, I love seeing shit like the car crash in reverse, or that scene that is the best money shot I think I've ever seen in an action movie, where they blow up the same building 2 times in a row, but once it's in forward and once it's in reverse, and I think I like jizz my pants in the theater like on impact
My
twice.
my favorite part was it's kind of stupid on the soldier's part, but they're running and the soldier steps on part of a building that was like on the ground after it exploded, and it reverse exploded, so it picked them up and threw them into into the building,
Yeah, dude.
and they're like
Like, I
caked in
mean,
it.
I pretend to be this man who appreciates like fine art and shit, but like, do you show me a man getting sucked in reverse into a building? I'm there. That's good.
Yeah, that
Like,
was my
there was
favorite three
lots of
seconds.
moments. There's lots of moments like that in this movie where it's like, yeah, this movie's good and it's got an intellect to it, but at the same time, don't you just want to see shit blow up in reverse? And I'm also very much that man as well.
Yeah, and that's what's fun about filmmakers like Nolan and Spielberg or Scorsese is that they kind of have
Mm,
something for everyone. You get a good balance,
right.
and that's why they're so popular. That's why they connect with people because it has enough to connect with highbrow, and I don't say highbrow and lowbrow, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the movie can, challenge my like intellect, but also make my like, you know, pulse quicken in the excitement of the action or something. Then like, damn, I just had a good time, So
You know, once
totally get it.
one scene I kind of had an issue with. It was a little too on the nose for me. Was when the protagonist gets invited to the dinner, and the evil Russian husband says
Right.
like, "Have you fucked my wife yet?" And it's just so over the top evil bad guy.
Yeah.
But then Washington replies. He says, "Not yet." And, that's a cool fun line. But after the movie's over, I was kind of pissed because what he should have said was, "I've already fucked your wife in the future."
Oh Jesus. I think the villain would have been, yeah, he would have been very scared and upset as to why, because at that point he just thinks he's an American diplomat. So that would freak him out in two ways.
Yeah, it was really
So
bothering me.
are you content that he didn't get that puss? That he was just this watchful protector at the end. He was basically like a Batman at the end, where he protected her from afar, but she gets to live her life with her son, and he does not get that puss. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's the vibe that I got. Just from what we're shown in the movie, because he explicitly says that he's not going to like be in her life, and it's kind
Right.
of like seeing he's like a weird guardian kind of protector that's preventing her from getting killed, but he's also I don't know. I don't think
'Cause
that I don't think that like he gets to come in her, to be honest.
Right. Well, that's yeah, exact. Well, what if he didn't reverse? Oh my God! So the semen would go into your dick. Wow, Jesus. I mean, come on. I
Well,
mean, if this was a Tarantino movie, that would have
you'd see
happened.
it.
Anyway, sorry.
What was funny to me though,
See,
this is relevant, is that I did think when she got shot, I was like, oh, we're gonna get that Superman the movie thing where he's gonna have to turn the world around in reverse to save her,
oh
and that's
Christ
essentially what
Almighty,
happened.
I love and hate that part of Superman because
Yeah,
it's like single handedly the most fun hokey superhero thing imaginable, but also the dumbest thing imaginable at the same time.
I know what you mean. I just have this huge love for Richard Donner's Superman, so I'm
Yeah.
cool with it. But it is definitely so goofy. This movie is played much more seriously, and I don't totally
Yes.
remember how it's accomplished or whatever. It's just kind of once again it's movie shit where it's like we have to go back in reverse, and then you guys do something, military men, and then she'll be okay. And
Yeah.
use the audience like, okay, yeah, they got to save the
The movie
woman,
really
and
it really asks you to accept a lot. Like what I don't get
yeah,
is like and they don't go into it on purpose, obviously. Like what even is the MacGuffin? Like the algorithm. It's just like a bunch of like cubes that are different shapes, and you take them apart and you put them together, and I guess that is enough nuclear power to destroy the universe by reversing time too much.
yeah. It just looks like they have like a bunch of really thick coasters that you put your cups on, or like no, those
Yeah,
ringing
that's
things.
exactly what it looked
The
like.
ringing coasters you get at like Dairy Queen when it like rings, it buzzes, and then your order's up. They basically have like nine of
Yeah,
those.
I mean, so I definitely tried to not think about that because the more I thought about like what even that is, I was like, that's just stupid. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't even look cool. Whatever the hell, I don't know.
I will say though, the one guy, the military guy that at the end, he's one of the
Yeah,
three men that gets three of them. I
yeah.
don't know who he is. I've never seen him in a movie before, but it was kind of nice to see.
Yes, you have actually. He's actually a famous actor. That's Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Oh
He
my
was the
god,
lead in Godzilla. He was Quicksilver in Age of
he's
Ultron. He's in
kick-ass.
one of my favorite movies, Nocturnal Animals.
Oh yeah, I forgot he's in Nocturnal Animals. That's crazy. I really like that movie as well. Um,
Oh, we have to talk about that at some point.
oh, that'd be
Oh,
fun.
that's
Yeah,
good.
I
I didn't
didn't
even
know
know
that
you
was
watched
him. That's
that.
so crazy
No.
because I really liked him in this movie. And I was like, I don't know who this guy is, but he's doing really good. And it's funny because after Kick Ass, I was thinking Aaron Taylor Johnson was kind of over because he wasn't
Yes.
like I like him in as Quicksilver. I don't
Yeah.
hate him in Godzilla like some other people do, but he definitely isn't that good either. So that makes me really happy that that was him, and that it makes me
Yes.
happier not knowing who he was and enjoying his performance so much. That was kind of a highlight of the movie for me.
He's a weird actor. He's kind of like a chameleon. I mean, his roles are never like the lead, but like whatever role he is as a supporting character, he's always just like um smart ass white man, but also in different ways. Like I don't know, like
Yeah,
because like that whole cowboy stance that he takes when he like, well, I could shoot you guys right now, but fuck that. I'm gonna get this stance, and like he just like he has such a cowboy stance. I don't.
yeah, no, I
Maybe
know
I'm the
exactly
only
what you
person.
mean.
Right. Okay. I'm glad I'm not the only person who thinks these things. I was just like, that's a very Aaron Taylor Johnson moment right there. I don't know. It's funny. I love it. It's
The
underrated.
speaking of that scene, the final twist, that is one thing in the movies. Like, even though like some of the things you feel like you're a step or two behind the narrative, there's some things where I feel like 3 or 4 steps before the narrative, where like as soon as they fight the people in the airport, I was like, okay, that's going to be them from the future coming
Right.
back. And similarly, as soon as they saw the corpse and you noticed a little key ring or whatever on the backpack, I was like, okay, that's going to
Right.
be Robert Pattinson. And
Yeah.
but so like when that twist was kind of announced, even though it was obvious, I was like, it was like, of course. But then they kind of extrapolate on it and say how
Yes.
like Washington recruits Pattinson, and they kind of
Right.
talk about how they have more adventures, and that I don't know why, but that scene really sold me on it. It was a really kind of charming, nice final scene with those characters.
Absolutely agree. I think it's kind of like subvert what you think the twist is because it's very choreographed, the twist with the dead body. And like you said, that could have been the final twist, like, oh, I gotta go back and die now, bye. But it wasn't just that. It was like, oh yeah, this is a lot of stuff that we did, and actually our timelines are completely fucked up. So we've actually done a lot of shit, but it hasn't happened yet, but it's already also happened yet. And I'm like, oh my god, like only that story twist could work in this movie with this whole inversion gimmick. And really, that final twist kind of like it tied together how cool the plot is or how cool it can be at the best times, but also, had some heart at the end with these two characters who, have been friendly and relying on each other the whole movie. And they basically just have a bro moment where they talk about being friends, and it made me feel things.
Yeah, and it also ties into that moment where Arpat mentions the protocol, and Washington's like, whose protocol, and Robert Pattinson's like, our protocol. So it kind of is a callback to that line as well, which kind of
Right.
seems like just a jokey thing, just a friendly moment,
Right.
but
And
actually hints at the twist.
it recontextualizes the movie too, which Nolan's movies do that very well, especially like The Prestige does that very well. Like once you see The Prestige, then you can like rewatch it and it'd be a completely different movie. Um, Now it kind of does that with Tenet, and I haven't seen it a second time yet. But the very first time, the protagonist thinks he meets Neil, Neil is like, oh, you'll take the Diet Coke. And you think he's just being a jackass by being like, oh, yeah, I bet this guy just drinks Diet Coke. What a loser. So you don't think of anything of it on your first viewing. But then on your second viewing, it's like, oh, he actually knows his favorite drink, like for real. Holy shit.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes sense too because like he just kind of shows up. It's very there's no like celebration or anything, like a big character introduction
Right.
kind of scene. It's just like the protagonist walks into a hotel or whatever, and then he's just like, hey, how's it going? Oh, have a Diet Coke. And it's like, this is weird. They're
Yeah.
just kind of throwing him into this mix here without.
Pretty much, but now it makes sense since you know that version of Robert Pattinson's character Neil is already like he already knows where to be, so he's gonna make it like very easy, for him to be found. That's very clever stuff. I like that a lot. It's gonna be really fun to rewatch this movie.
Yeah, I definitely think because for me, I think that I like the movie really benefited from, like I said, the last half hour to 40 minutes. Um, so I think a rewatch could definitely bump the movie up, probably at least a half step for me.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, I think a lot of Nolan's movies are like that. I think they're usually better on rewatch, honestly.
So
Like
oh, sorry.
nothing will ever match the excitement of like discovering the story like for the first time. But then you kind of every time you do rewatch a film of his, you have that it's coming and it's good. So you kind of have that catharsis of like, now I'm initiated kind of thing.
Yeah, I always say there's two kinds of movies or albums or books or whatever. The kind that's best the first time you experience it, and the kind that's the worst the first time you experience it.
Right. I don't even know which one it's better to be, honestly, because there's merit to both.
Oh, definitely. And sometimes it's a kind of a combination where it's neither or, but typically it's one or the other for me. With this
Right.
movie
Well,
though,
some moments of this movie will never be better like the first time. But I think some of the other moments in this movie will absolutely be enhanced by the knowledge of the rewatch.
yeah, one thing I want to touch on is the reverse physics and stuff. Even though there's really no way to do it, um, like the ship sailing backwards, the seagull flying backwards. I don't know.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
funny.
I mean, so I just want to see more things happen backwards now. I don't even know how they film all of these things backwards or what
I
did
think
they
they just
really like
rewind it.
I mean, did they rewind it? But like then they combined the forward shit in the rewind. I don't know, whatever. Movie magic. I don't even want to think about
I
it.
just kept thinking,
But
like, when they cut to the ship, because they'd be talking about that, it would show the ship, like, this establishing shot of it going backwards. I just thought about, like, it almost looked, if you just walked in on the movie at that point where two characters talking that showed the ship, you'd almost think, like, they accidentally put the clip in reverse when they uploaded it for the movie.
yeah, I know. Well, that it's just it does have that kind of uncanny valley, but that it's simultaneously also the appeal of it.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to see like somebody eat food in reverse. Like I want to see somebody like play football, a whole football game in reverse. I just want to see it all. Like I'm so curious about what it all even looks like.
Yeah, I'm trying to
So I guess I
think.
could just rewind anything in the whole universe, and I guess I would
Yeah.
technically get that experience. But
Well, I think
you know,
the big set piece of this film is definitely the plane crash, and you probably know this, but they actually crashed the plane. That was
yeah,
real, which kind of you could
yeah,
tell that it was real because the camera angles were not that sophisticated. You could tell for the one shot when
yeah,
the plane enters the airport, crashes through. They had to set a camera up in like the
right.
furthest
Because they
corner.
had to like secure these goddamn cameras, or else they would lose this shot, and it'd be like, well, if you lose the shot, welp, guess I
Exactly,
can't do that again.
and but it's pretty insane. Do you think it paid
Yeah.
off? Do you think it was worth using a real plane?
That's a loaded question, Todd. Because
Yeah.
like,
I heard I don't know if you knew this, but the plane was actually full of people.
okay, well then it obviously paid off then because we got to do some population control here.
Yeah.
Um,
That's where all the people that auditioned for roles in the movie that didn't make the cut. He said they could be extras and put them on the plane.
you got to be extras in the plane, man. Oh my god. I think it's like the hospital in the Dark Knight. I'm pretty sure in the Art of the Dark Knight trilogy, there's a book, and my brother owns it. They blew up that hospital in the Dark Knight, and that hospital was going to be demolished anyway. So like would say that that's absolutely worth it. If they're going to demolish it anyway, might as well make it a fantastic part of a movie, right? So I think it's just kind of that cost benefit analysis where I think I don't know if they were actually needing to blow up this airport. But maybe they just didn't need that hangar anymore, and maybe they paid for the plane and the movie budget. I have no idea.
Yeah,
It's
well, speaking of cost effectiveness, I don't know if you followed this part of the film or not, but it's the first big theatrical movie after COVID. There's like Bill and Ted 3, but that was also streaming. I think TeneT's the first one that's like, this is a fucking blockbuster. You're going to the theater. You're gonna see it on the big screen, and so it cost I think $220 million to make, and I believe after opening weekend it made $10 million, which is pretty scary.
yeah.
Um,
No, it's and that's obviously the product of the times. It's
oh,
just
definitely.
rough. I can't imagine the pressure like the studio feels and all these other entities feel like not making their money back because of like the world today.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine I'll make a lot of money on home video and everything and streaming eventually. Maybe not all the budget, but like, I mean, it's a tremendous loss, and it was a huge gamble. And I think they knew that releasing it, and I think they knew that they couldn't just release on streaming. And I do get that. I do think it's a theatrical
Yeah.
movie, but I do think they should have waited an extra year. But my question for you is, how do you think this will affect Nolan's career? Because like, if this was any other filmmaker, let's be real, this would be like career ending. I mean, it's a fucking
Yeah.
huge. It's like you get KO'd in the first round kind of failure financially, but it's not really his fault as a filmmaker. It's just circumstance.
Right. I think his career will be fine. Nolan's kind of taken more of a break between movies as well. So if you look at Nolan's filmography from like 2000 to 2014, pretty much all of his movies are 2 years apart. Um, and then now his movies are always 3 years apart. I think he just gives himself more family time, more time to write, kind of like that time off. So by the time we get another Nolan movie, I expect it will be 2023. And by that time, I mean, I think nobody will care. I think his career will be fine. I think Warner Brothers loves him. I mean, honestly, they just let him do whatever the fuck he wants. So I see that continuing, even if Tenet, blew at the box office, because also somebody had to take that brunt of the pandemic. Somebody had to be the first big theatrical release back. Um, Whether it was in January 2021 or September 2020, that's up for debate, of course. But it was going to have to be somebody. So if it had to be somebody, I'm glad it was Nolan in a way, because he could take that, loss and still have a career, I think. And he's made so many well acclaimed movies that I don't think, I mean, his next movie might be smaller budget, but I mean, all movies in the next few years might be smaller budget. So there's also that.
Yeah, it's very true, and I think that nobody would have had a better chance of success other than either Nolan or Marvel or something like that.
Right.
But as far as like an independent, or not an independent, but an original movie, I think that he was probably our best bet. Him or like even Spielberg. But let's be real, Spielberg's just a legacy title at this point.
Right.
Like, I'm not knocking Spielberg; he's one of my favorite filmmakers, but I don't think people get excited about the new Spielberg movie like they did 30 years ago.
No, absolutely not. I mean, yeah, maybe Nolan or Tarantino or something. I really think it will be, and this is getting on a tangent from Tenet and just talking about movies in general. I think the next big test for a huge blockbuster and what will be successful will be Dune. And Dune is slated for December 2020 in the same time slot that Star Wars usually has. It had in the past few years. So, and Denis Villeneuve is a pretty big director, but not as big as Nolan. He's not as well known, but he's made some big movies and critically acclaimed movies. So I think that'll be the next big test is Dune. I hope that movie does well as well, because it deserves to. There's just a lot of shitty circumstances.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because Dune itself is like it's very mainstream, but yet also kind of niche. So like it's got an
Yes.
awkward place where it inspired all these huge mainstream things, but yet Dune itself is still kind of nerd. It's kind of like Star Trek, where everybody knows what it is, everybody knows its influence, but like not everybody actually watches it or in Dune's case reads it.
Yeah, no, I would say that's pretty accurate. I haven't even read Dune, and I've actually told myself to not read it because I actually want to see the movie first. Because I just get a kick out of seeing a movie first, and then usually the book has more information. So I actually like doing the book after the movie kind of deal. That's what I did with Harry Potter growing up too. Um, I'm very much open, and I want to jump into the fandom of the Dune world and everything. I just hope it doesn't get screwed because of everything going on, or they might push it back further into 2021. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't personally have any interest in seeing the Dune movie, but I want to read the book for a very long time. It's just this is just such a commitment. Even just to read if you just read the first book alone, even that's just so much.
Right. Yeah. But no, to get back to Tenet, glad it came out selfishly because it'd been 6 months since I'd seen a movie. I saw a My Hero Academia movie in March, and then before that was Sonic the Hedgehog, and those are the only other movies I've seen in 2020. And that was our first episode of this podcast, so that it
Yeah.
really speaks volumes about how much of a break there was from movies in the theaters. I mean, typically I like seeing a movie at least every couple of months, but so selfishly to come back to the theater, even if there was nobody sitting around me and we had to have our masks either on us or on our person, like it was absolutely just a blast to go to the movies with my fiance.
Yeah, I agree. It was nice to go back to the movies. It's sad that, this one was kind of the martyr for cinema. But like
Right.
you said, like I think Nolan will be fine. Like he may have a smaller movie the next time around anyhow, but I'd kind of like to see him do a smaller movie, so I'm not
Yeah, I
really
think that could
too.
be exciting, honestly. So I'm not even really concerned. I mean, I'm pretty sure you could make something exciting out of anything. And you look at Memento and Insomnia, like those are smaller movies. I mean, so he
Oh
he
yeah.
certainly has the potential to do that again.
Exactly. And that's actually where I would like to see him go after this because I just feel like we've seen his blockbusters now. We kind of know what to expect. We had his
Right.
war movie, and that was what was nice about Dunkirk was that it was a very different kind of movie for him in some ways, while retaining his trademarks. So I kind of hope we go more that direction again for the next one. And I guess Interstellar is quite different as well, and then that's what makes that
Right.
movie
But it's still
special.
very much popcorn. Like there's crazy, awesome visual stuff going on. And like, yeah, it would be interesting to see if he doesn't have like ACI candy like literally all the time
I
in a
wouldn't mind
movie.
seeing him just do like what about like just a small character piece, like just a drama or even like a musical or something, just like really out there for him. I'd like to see something like that.
An animated movie.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Maybe a musical would be his strongest suit because people they don't like his choreography, but I don't think he personally tells people how to fight in Batman. I think he hired someone else to do that. So I think
That would be very funny. Maybe he'll do a Batman the musical.
there we go. So do we want to wrap it up and slap an? Do you care if we do numbers for this one? I feel a little more comfortable giving a number rating than a letter rating.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to go first or should I go first?
I'll go first, and this is out of 10
Yeah.
to go back to the initial
It's out
discussion
of
of
TeneT.
10. Yeah, out of 10. So like I'm gonna give it, and this is where it gets into like for me anything over a 5 is positive, and I really think this film will benefit from a rewatch for me. On a first
Mhm.
watch, I'm gonna give it a 7. I really enjoyed the last half hour. I really wasn't feeling it up until then. It wasn't bad. It was just
Mhm.
kind of like all right. But then at the end, I liked it a lot more. And I feel like
Right.
the benefit of it clicking at the end, the benefit of kind of just getting a better understanding what's happening. If I rewatch it, I could see it going up to like a 7.5 or something, which would be a pretty high rating for me. Um,
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was probably my least favorite Nolan movie, It was still a good movie. It's a good popcorn movie. But I don't think it's one that particularly stood out to me.
Right. It's I don't even know where I'd rank it amongst his films. I don't think it's my least favorite, but God, I guess it would go down towards the lower end of the ranking. It's so hard to rank like good movies against good movies. But since I'm a Nolan shill, I will veer higher in grade than you, but not as high as like my perfect scores I give like Inception or Interstellar. Um, Tenet's got a lot you could nitpick. Probably more so than probably more so than all of his movies except for The Dark Knight Rises. I think The Dark Knight Rises is actually probably his worst movie. Um, but I think I would give Tenet an 8. I think it's got a lot of things going for it and it gets a lot of things done right. But then that might go up to an 8.5 or a 9 on rewatch just because of the however satisfying the plot feels like it comes together and how many eureka moments I have on a rewatch will definitely affect the grade. And that's why I felt weird rating it like on a because I write the letterbox reviews and I felt weird rating it. I was like, I don't know what to give this. So I would probably, if I'm being super critic, I would give it an 8. And then there's a part of me that basically to me it's like a 9. But I'll settle for an 8, and then maybe it'll become a 9 on rewatch. I'm just kind of trying to imagine how much I like it on rewatch in the future. But the future has already happened, so maybe it's already a 9 because the rewatch was that good.
Yeah, and that's my thoughts on the movie as a whole. Is like my opinion of it changed quite drastically as it went on. So I definitely feel
Right.
like I could really feel. I don't think I'll be more negative on it with rewatches. Typically, I'm just not that way in general. Generally, I like movies more the more I watch them. But
Right. They got their stranglehold on you.
yeah, but this one particularly, so much of it's about the learning curve of the film itself, which honestly makes it a little more frustrating or even uninteresting as opposed to engaging or it doesn't always strike my curiosity at certain points where you're just like, what's going to happen? I don't get it. I can't wait to find out. A lot of it to me just kind of
Yeah.
was a bit just clunky. It just didn't
Right.
quite come together for me for quite a bit of it. And then at the end, it mostly did. But I don't
Right.
know that I'll ever fully just like, for instance, like Interstellar. I really like Interstellar. I've got a lot of issues with Interstellar, but anytime it's on TV, I'd watch it and have a good time. I don't
Yeah.
know if I could say that about this movie. I think I might
Right.
rewatch it once more in my life, and I'll probably like it quite a bit more that second time.
Right. Yeah, I don't think this is a movie that I can rewatch like every year going forward, like I do Inception or Interstellar. Those are kind of like my comfort foods, and like just experiencing them again. I would explain it as such as Interstellar and Inception are more like his movies, where if you don't understand what's going on, those movies still make you go, "Oh wow, look at that." Whereas Tenet has more moments that it does have the wow moments, but it also has the when you don't understand what's going on, your head hurts. Like your head hurts. Like the confusion factor is certainly up to the max in Tenet, and it's purposely done so. And I just always think that it's funny in the movie when the characters and early on when the exposition redhead character that girl
I
she's
think that's
like
actually
she
this is a
literally
funny
says
thing.
don't think about it.
I think that character, I could be mistaken, is Fiona Dourif, Brad Dourif's daughter. Brad Dourif is his first acting role was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He got an Oscar
Oh,
for it. He played Chucky in the Child's Play movies, the little killer doll. He was in The Exorcist 3. He was in X Files. Great character actor. Oh, he's on Deadwood as a daughter, maybe the best character in the whole show. Um, there's a really great actor. His daughter acts as well, and I saw she was listed, and I was like, I think she was a girl who just like spouted
okay.
exposition for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that must be her then. But
Because
yeah, she has that line for the protagonist. he's like trying to wrap his brain around inversion. And she basically, it's kind of like that wink at the audience moment where she tells him, I just don't think about it. Like that's literally the line. And I think that's a good way to set up your movie, both in terms of humor and also what they're going to be in for.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the movie for me is like kind of that, kind of the complexity of the physics. The fact that I wasn't ever really sold on the physics entirely, even after watching the movie and enjoying it and being positive on it. I'm still not totally like, yeah, it's badass stuff in reverse. The gun goes into or the bolt goes into the gun and stuff.
Gun goes into the bullet. How about that?
Yeah, it's still a little bit just silly and just kind of weird to me, more so than awesome. And I think that holds it back a lot for me, as I just was never quite sold on the concept of it.
Right. I don't think it's as cool of a concept as Inception, and how, wow, like steering a van off a cliff will make the hallway lose gravity. Like that stuff seems more like genius, I guess. It's like, who would have thought of that? Like that's crazy. Whereas like reverse time is like, well, everybody thought about that when they press rewind on the VHS when they were a kid. Like it's not as like groundbreaking. And then you kind of have to compare it to Inception in that way, where the concept is still great and still fun and different, but it's not quite the same magic as like the Inception physics.
Yeah, like that movie, whereas that's a movie I just really enjoyed, just unabashedly the whole way through. I think I gave that like a 9.5. This one is like kind of more of just a popcorn movie. It's just kind of a fun watch, a good
Yeah.
cast, fun action sequences, good dialogue and everything for the most part. But then it's also got those head scratcher moments, a lot of them, which kind of makes it hard to be a popcorn movie when you're constantly being like, wait, what the fuck? So it's kind of like it's kind of a brain dead movie in a way, in the sense of
Yeah.
like the enjoyment, but yet it's also kind of too confusing for its own good, while also being very simple, which sometimes works really well. Like I said, the third act, sometimes the first or second, it doesn't work as well for me.
Right. So it's almost like you have to be a giant nerd like us to enjoy the movie, because I'm feeling like maybe other audiences who just like the popcorn flicks or just like the head scratchers, they might really hate Tenet. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. It is more divisive than its typical movies. I think it's really because it's kind of a crowd pleaser, but it's kind of just too messy in terms of its own physics and internal logic. Not even it's
Mm,
breaking the logic, but just it's a little bit too much like Primer or something for the average
right.
moviegoer just to watch and have a good time with, like The Dark Knight.
Right. I think like the duality of the movie being super crowd pleasing and also super complicated. Like I can also respect that though, because there aren't a whole lot of movies that even attempt that. And they think this movie does it pretty well. It's just not going to please everybody. Um, if you, I feel like if you have more of a wider film palette, like maybe you and I do, like you'll accept it. I mean, but again, it might make the rating suffer as well. My theory is that maybe this movie is a popcorn flick going forward in time and a head scratcher going backward in time, and then they just meet in the middle, and then once that happens, all space and time just get erased from existence.
I think that's it. Well, do you have anything else to say, or can we wrap this one up?
No, I think we talked a lot. This movie is complicated, but yeah, if you can safely go see Tenet and you like Christopher Nolan, go see it. I think if you like Christopher Nolan movies, you'll like this movie. As probably the best recommendation that I can give. But if you don't like Nolan, this is definitely not your movie.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, if you're a Nolan fan, you'll probably like the movie maybe more or less than some other ones. If you generally don't like his movies, or even just kind of like divided on them, honestly, I'd say like wait for the stream or a rental, because I don't know if this is the film worth going back to theaters for everyone.
Right. Yep. No, I would agree.
Oh,
Well, I've been. I guess you close it out. So yeah, that's right.
all right. I'm Todd Crawford,
I'm Eric Svinsky.
and this episode of Too Cool for the Comic Shop is brought to you by Warner Brothers.